So today I'm going to talk about integrating voice with Salesforce. Basically using a new feature that was introduced lately, Lightning Open CTI. See how you can build really cool soft phones and call centers with it. My name is David. I've been with Salesforce for about 5 years, and I'm a lead software engineer on the Service Cloud. So here's what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be only 40 minutes. We'll try to save some time for questions and answer at the end. But if we don't have a chance to answer all your questions, I'll be outside the room for a little bit after the session. We can talk more, or you can grab me or email me. No problem. So can you raise your hand if you used OpenCTI in the past, if you know what it is? All right, about a third. So definitely we're going to have to do the introduction. No, we cannot skip it. So we'll talk a little bit about it, what it is. Then we'll show you this new app that we wrote, the demo adapter, which is you can use yourself to build your own soft phone. We'll talk a little bit about it, about customizing it, and even deep dive into the app so you can really understand how to build your own app. And as I said, we'll have some questions and answers at the end. All right, introduction. So basically, OpenCTI is just a JavaScript library, JavaScript API, and it's been around for at least 10 years, you know, with classic Salesforce. And what it really lets you is, you know, you can build telephony systems, CTI systems that can integrate with Salesforce without having to install any desktop adapters and without a lot of customization. So you use that, and I'll show you how easy it is, and you can create your own customizable soft phones, and without, of course, worry about, you know, which platforms you're on, which platforms your users are on, and you can use it on Mac, on IE, et cetera, without any problem. So that's the reason why Salesforce released it, and it's been used quite widely by millions of customers. We have quite a few partners that build nice CTI adapters, and as I will show you, you guys can do as well. So just for people who really don't know what an OpenCTI, what you can do with it. So basically, this is a library, a framework where, you know, you can first set the height of width of the soft phone if you wanted to take a small part of the page or not. There's a feature we call click to dial, where, you know, every phone that you see on the Salesforce page becomes clickable once you basically enable or disable this OpenCTI method, click to dial. And you can do a lot of things. You can read, you know, basically some of the features. My favorite is, and the most used by far method, is the run Apex method, which is kind of a glue for a lot of things. Lets you execute an Apex method from an Apex class. So if you have an Apex method that will, you know, generate a task automatically or do anything, you can attach it to any control on your phone using this Apex methods. You can do a search, you can do a lot of things. So that's OpenCTI. Again, it will be more evident once we, you know, dive a little bit deeper into the app and see what we can do with it. But anyway, as I said, it's been around for 10 years, but really only with the classic UI, and now with all its awesomeness, it's part of the Lightning experience. So I think it looks better, and you can do a lot of things with it. And, you know, at the same time, we also changed quite a bit the API, changed the structure of the the request and the response. So there's a bit to learn if you're migrating from classic CTI to the Lightning CTI. But again, it's quite intuitive and I think better, so it's not going to be a pain. At least I hope. So anyway, how do you get an experience? How do you dive deep into that? You just basically install the app that we wrote. It's called the demo adapter. I know, not very imaginative name, but this package, right? It's packaged, but also you have all the source code. It's open source. It lets you really test drive an example implementation of a call center and a soft phone. So it highlights, it demonstrates all the features not all the features, but the main features of OpenCTI, and you don't have to even connect to a phone system. We have the ability to connect to a phone system, a real phone system, with the Twilio, but really just for you to understand how it works. Inside the package, you see the call center definition. You'll see Visual Force pages. You'll see a Lightning application and Lightning components. You see a few Apex classes, and also page layout for tasks. So that's a package, and of course we're going to show you. It's open source. It's all up there on Developer Force. So you're welcome to just fork it. This project and create your own adapter, or file issues or ask questions over there. No problem at all. So how do you install it? So you basically log into your. This works as well, right? Well, yeah. So you log into your Salesforce org. So this is, by the way, the source code, the Lightning demo adapter. And this is an org that I created just a few days ago. So basically what you do is you grab this package, this link, and you install it on your org. Make sure you have my domain enabled. I mean, it's all in the description, in the explanation, but that's a prerequisite. And it's really easy. You just install it in 2 minutes. Depends on the Wi-Fi. I mean, I think it will be a minute. I mean, as I mentioned here, this only works on the Winter 17 pre-release, which will, I think, Winter 17 will be released very soon. So, but until then, until it's released and it's in production, you can definitely just create your own pre-release org and then install it and try it out. All right, installation is done. And after you do that, you basically, you have a call center ready. If you go to setup and then choose call center, you'll see that a call center was added, right, with an adapter URL, which is where the app is hosted, and with the few definitions, the default height and width, and some information about your phone provider. Now I use here dummy provider, but I'll show you how to do some integration with Twilio. But so what we have to do is just basically add a user. You have a few agents, right? A few users. You add them to this call center, and then when they log in, they will see this phone on their page. So I'm adding it to the call center. And then what I have to do, I just simply have to create a Lightning app for these agents, for people who I want them to have the phone experience, right? So let's call it CTI agent. That's the app, right? And it's, you're going to choose, it's going to be in part of the utility bar. You just need to choose your voice utility, Open CTI soft phone, and click next. And as you would with any app, you just choose the tabs that are going to be shown in this particular app. So I just added all the items there. And I'm assigning it to these particular profiles. So now, since I assigned it to my particular user, I'm going to switch to the CTI agent app. And you should see the phone on the utility bar at the bottom. So basically, the app is going to be right here. This is what you guys just installed. Right, you log in. Right, and then you have all these features. For example, you can do a search, and we'll call a person, and then you can see how it pops to this particular contact. Why do I have this error here? I'm not sure. So this is basically, we just installed the phone, we installed the app. So this is the explanation on how to, what I, just basically following what I just did, adding a user and then creating a Lightning Experience app. Now, when you launch this app, the phone will look basically like that, like you just saw, right? You should also have right, this particular dial pad that we give you, right? You have the ability to change presence and so forth. So let's talk a little bit more about features that we have there. Simulate. So when you're busy, you cannot get a phone call, of course. But when you're available, right, this button would basically simulates an incoming call. Okay, we have a problem here. All right, sorry about that. So you can get a phone call, and you can call. So we can do all these things with the demo adapter. Well, to customize it, of course, you can go to the call center settings and change some of the definitions. Right, so, and you can see in the app you have complete control over this call center. You can add entries, remove entries, and retrieve the entries. So that's basically your cache or a place where you can store your settings. Now, let's talk a little bit about the source code. So all the source code, once you installed it, right, you can access it in two ways. You can certainly, the most user-friendly way is just going to the developer console. when you go to the developer console, you can open all these Lightning resources. So all these Lightning resources were added by this particular app, right? You have the ticker, the dial pad, all these panels and so forth. So basically, let's look, for example, at the CTI logging. We have a component, right? So you can very easily update it, right? For example, instead of logging, you can change it, or you can change the logo, the image on the top, right? And you have all the code in the controller and in the helper, and you can feel free to, of course, change that. Now, if you want to do the integration with real call providers, most of the code is in a place called, it's in an Apex class. So to use Twilio, you first need to install the Twilio package, which is, I mean, the information is over there. You can see exactly how to install it. But once you're there, we have the softphone provider helper, where you'll find multiple providers that implement a softphone provider. So right now, in order to implement softphone provider, you only have to implement make call. So we have the dummy provider, which by default is what we use, right? Which basically doesn't do anything, just returns a dummy response. If you want to use Twilio, what you need to do is you need to actually implement the call with Twilio. So in that case, it's not a complete implementation, it's just a proof of concept, right? You just basically have to uncomment this code. And then you need to change the provider in the settings from the dummy provider to the Twilio provider. So I encourage you to go and look at the code, understand, and of course there are other voice provider that you can use. So now basically every time that a call is being made, it will go through this Twilio provider. We really don't have time to maybe show that. So here is the information, what you have to do. You basically just need to provide a CTI provider, a provider account ID, and authorization token, and edit the helper. As I said, you can also add your own implementation. You just basically add it to the particular, to this softphone provider helper. You add an inner class, and that should work. Another class there that is useful there is the controller, which this is basically how we are making the call, right? And it can accept any provider, and that's basically using a provider factory. I think that will be more evident once we do a dive deep into the app. It will be clear to see how we actually run this code using Run Apex. So far I showed you like the functionality, but nothing about the actual implementation, actual development of an app. But as you can see, in essence, we have Lightning components, right, which are basically responsible for the visuals, for what you see on the phone, on the app itself. And all the back-end work, or all the work that basically is delegated to to get information from Salesforce or to manipulate pages and everything else is delegated to the Open CTI library. So, so let's talk a little bit about the app architecture. By the way, I just want to make sure that, is there a quick question I can answer right now before we move on? Well, there will be questions answered at the end, but just to make sure that we're good. Yeah? So the logging is not really doing anything. You'll see in the code. It just basically enables a click to dial. You can choose. You'll have full control. You can do whatever you want with it. But the idea is that we want CTI users or agents to log into the CTI system with their own, authorization token and account. So that's why we show that. It's not a login to Salesforce. It's logging into the provider. All right. So the app architecture. So I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with the term Lightning Out. How many of you ever heard about that? So Lightning Out is a very kind of odd beast. It's like Lightning, but it's a little bit more. It's basically it's an app that is hosted on a Visual Force page. So, but the whole thing is basically is an app that contains multiple Lightning components. It only uses public, of course, components and SLDS style, or Salesforce Lightning design system style. So we're trying to be kind of very open and generic. So the architecture is pretty simple. We just have one panel manager, which is it's called demo adapter component. It's a single view application, meaning at any given time, only one panel is being drawn over the demo adapter, over the panel managers. So this particular demo adapter component, it renders other panels, and it handles all possible events. Right? The possible events that we support right now are render panel, so you can actually switch the view, edit panel, and get settings, which I think get setting doesn't work. I'll take a look. And I also added a few custom components, Toast, which I think is pretty useful, SVG to render icons, and some more. So here's the architecture. As I said, this panel manager handles events and basically can render other panels, instead of the existing one. The render panel calls $A, which is the Aura framework create component, and then this way you can basically create any component that is implementing panel. And edit panel, we basically call the Open CTI method set softphone panel label. And when on get settings, we call the Open CTI method. Okay, that's right. Get softphone, the get call center settings. So here are basically a few panels, right, that we have. The phone panel, the CTI login panel, the connected panel, and CTI initiated panel, right? So for example, what we see here is the call initiated panel. And inside, you'll see there are actually more components. We have this component, which is the ticker, right? And we have these buttons. So here's for example, the CTI login panel. On the login, when you press login, what we do is simply call Open CTI and do enable click to dial, and then render the phone panel. And this is the phone panel, which is the most complicated panel. right? We have a few components here. We have a phone toolbar. We have this search bar, and on enter we call run Apex. On click, and then one we call, basically we render the call initiated panel. So we have this particular, another nice component which you can borrow easily, the dial pad, and a few more handlers. What I want to show you is that basically all the OpenCTI methods are very easily attached to events on the UI, which I think is quite common pattern for building UI applications. Every component has an onInit method. So for example, the phone panel onInit, it will call onClick to dial to add a listener for outgoing calls. Here's the phone toolbar, right? We have a stop status drop down and so forth. So let me show you a little bit of the code so you'll get a feeling for that. So this is the GitHub repo. I think it has pretty good documentation about how to deploy this stuff, how to develop using the Eclipse plugin, how to use it, and even how to integrate with the third-party partners. Now, the code, the idea is that once you fork this repo, you don't have to create a package every time. You just basically simply can deploy it using Ant. I think it's quite useful. So anyway, this is the source code repository. We have all the Aura components under source Aura, right? So you can, this is basically the interface for a panel. Every panel needs to register, can fire these three events. So the CTI login panel, as I showed you, it contains, so every component contains the markup, which is the component itself, the HTML, right, or the template. And it also contains the controller and the helper, plus the CSS, of course. For example, if we want to attach something to the logging button, right, we have this button, right, and on click, we call c.handle login, right? So when we go to the controller, it calls the helper handle login, where you see what it does, it's basically simply calling OpenCTI, right? So the crux, or the really, it downs to, at the end, we're calling OpenCTI, on many events. If you want to see everything that you can do with OpenCTI, I attached a file called OpenCTI code samples, which I think is very useful. We actually use this file to test OpenCTI, in-house. So you can actually try out, you can have your own org, right? And you can try everything here, and then when you open, your Chrome DevTools and the console, you can see the results, because we put a console log for every result. So you can see exactly what how run Apex works, search, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? So that will be quite useful for you. I think what we do a lot of time, you basically figure out what we want to do, right? You build the UI without the OpenCTI implementation, then you play a little bit with the OpenCTI with using these particular samples to get what you want, and then you attach it to one of the UI elements, or you can attach it to an init or after ender, or anywhere that you want in the Aura lifecycle, in Lightning lifecycle. So here's the, as I said, the status drop down. I haven't showed you the help, but it's also quite useful. Also, you can read some info. When you open the app, you'll see some useful information in the help, including resources online. So even if you don't remember anything from what we talked about right now, you can just go there and read about it. That's the call initiated panel, right? I think you saw that, right? We have a ticker, we have a state. On init, it calls the Open CTI screen pop. And when you accept, it will take you to another panel, which is the connected panel. We'll show you the record. When you end the call, it will call save log, which is something very useful for CTI partners. They want to log tasks for every call that an agent made. So we make we create a task with the ticker duration, the contact info, and so forth and so forth. So that's that. And now I think we have 10 minutes, 9 or 10 minutes for questions. So go ahead.
Would you recommend this architecture as a strategy for migrating an existing Open CTI integration to Lightning?
What is the current architecture?
Well, it's just a visual page in Classic, and we create like a single application and dynamically create the components. I believe we can also use the same for Classic. The goal is to use all Open CTI libraries and integrations.
I see. Of course, with that approach, you will not be able to render that on Classic. So this particular Lightning application will not run on your on Classic. What you could do is basically have two Visual Force pages, right? One for Classic, one for Lightning, right? And then you add some agents you add to this particular call center that serves the Lightning page, and some agent will be served the Classic page. Or they can have different username for different purposes. But I do recommend it as a way of developing Lightning applications. I think that's useful. Next question.
Kind of related to that, as I understand it, Lightning has a new UI, and you still have a lot of classifications that pre-exist in Lightning, and you're still going to be using most Salesforce users are going to go pure Lightning, right? You're going to have a mix of classifications and Lightning pages.
So if you have Visual Force pages or even just regular pages that include OpenCTI, you can serve them both in Lightning and Classic. So that I think answers your question. You can continue to serve them in Classic. You'll only have to make some modification to adjust to the new API. However, if you want to use this approach, you want to have really nice Lightning components that you can use, you can grab from here and here, and create a new experience, then unfortunately there's no, supporting back Classic users. But migrating from Classic to Lightning is possible. There's no just migrating back.
But in a normal use, the Salesforce user is going to want if they're a phone user, and that's primarily their function, they're going to want a soft phone capability, whether they're using Classic or Lightning. And they can have a user, as a navigator, they're going to be Lightning sometimes, and they're going to be Classic sometimes, correct? And if they've only got Lightning and store a soft phone, it's not going to show up in Classic, right?
So you can have a page, right? Not a Lightning app, and we have a setting called compatibility, Salesforce Compatibility, right here. By default, it's Classic and Lightning. So if you have a page that is not using Lightning, it could be served both in Lightning and Classic.
You wouldn't be able to use a pure Lightning solution. If you say classic Lightning, you can't write it in Lightning.
Exactly.
So if you have users who really want to use both, you really have to write a dual mode software. You really can't write a pure Lightning software expecting users to be satisfied with that. They're still using a classic apps, and they need call center functionality in classic as well as Lightning.
Yes, but I'd like to talk to you a little bit more maybe after this session and understand exactly the use case, because there should be probably a way to kind of support both at the same time and do some smart dynamic switching.
I know we can build it, but we can't build it using Lightning, or at least not without sort of reproducing a lot of that code.
Yes. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Can we have voice to text
Voice to, no, that is not supported in Open CTI, but that's a nice feature to have. Yeah.
So some Salesforce customers will buy a vendor CTI, and then some will use the API to write around them.
Right.
Do you have any insight into what use cases drive customers to write their own CTI?
So from what I know, most customers use vendors provided CTI solutions, and they don't go into the business of writing it themselves. And I guess it's just a matter of testing it, scalability, and so forth and so forth. But I think that if you have some developers in house, and you want to have more control. For example, use case that involve writing complicated Apex code, right, and attaching it to some UI elements and so forth. Then that will be useful. But I do know that even if you take an existing package from one of the partners, they will gladly give you some advice and help on further customizing it to your needs. But I think it's pretty I wouldn't say easy, but it's pretty useful to know that stuff and build your own.
So one of the product issue we have is a lot of users not using CTI. That is that the widget is actually occupying some real estate in Salesforce.
What is Occupy?
I mean, the widget is taking some space, and they need to constantly minimize and maximize the widget, that CTI widget. But when they navigate in multiple screens, they're getting into pop-up or pop-down. They have no look at it there. It's a huge productivity factor for us. Is there a way we can fix that CTI widget in one side of the screen where it is not actually taking the Salesforce screen?
So you're talking about the utility bar at the bottom? So the soft phone can be customized to multiple sizes, right? You can set the height and width.
To hide the Salesforce data, right? Can I just move it away, pop out, but still stay in Salesforce? Navigate, again, they have to minimize, see the data, then
So we have an API, an Open CTI API to minimize and maximize and so forth, automatically. So you can just build it in. You can have add window listeners, right, to basically control that. So that should be done. If what you want is just minimize it automatically and not just get rid of of this real estate, the utility bar. So that's possible, and I can help you with that if you want to ask more later.
We've got a use case where we're trying to track the duration of the call, and also that when a call is made, stick in the activity history, we have an opportunity, but also give our sales consultants the ability to send text messages and record that in the activity history as well. Does this support text messaging?
So text messaging is supported by Twilio, so you should be able to do an integration and grab that. So no problem. Yeah, because as you can see, we don't have any call-related methods in OpenCTI. So yeah, so using Apex connectors, you should be able to do that. Last question.
If you are building your Lightning software, and you're like a vendor, and therefore you're going to be distributing that to multiple customers, is there a way to do that where they're not installing a package on their work, or you are linking effectively to your public pages?
Oh yeah. You can have an absolute URL in the CTI adapter URL there.
That can reference a Lightning page for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most customers will be kind of wary about it. I'm not sure if they will like that idea, but that's possible. Yeah, you have to convince them that.
Well, that way we own it, it's in the cloud, they don't maintain it.
Yeah, most people, most vendors include it in their package. Basically a page. It could be a pure page, could be a visual page. If it's a pure HTML, it could be part of the resources, of the static resource, and then you can reference it. You can even have a page that redirects to your page, so you hide it from, not hide it from the customer, but in a way, yeah, they don't realize that it goes and redirects to your public page. So I think that's the most common thing, yeah. For your use case, put this particular page in a static resource, and that will redirect to your, to your actual URL. All right, it was really great talking to you guys. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much.